Check Podcasts. Hi, I'm Bruce Williams. I'm the CEO of the Greater Victoria Chamber of Commerce, and this is Chamber Chats, being done, as always, from the podcasting studios here at the Czech Media Group, one of our chamber champions. I'd like to begin by acknowledging, as always, that I live and work in the unceded ancestral territories of the Lekwungen Nations. They are Lekwungen-speaking nations, the Songhees and the Esquimalt. And Chamber Chats is made possible by the support of Island Savings, a division of First West Credit Union. So, all of the newly elected councils across the region are getting themselves back in place. And this was an election that saw a number of surprises for some people. Well, maybe it wasn't surprises for some. Maybe the biggest of all was in the City of Langford, where there was pretty much a clean slate through council and a new mayor elected. Today, we have the pleasure of chatting with the sort of new mayor of Langford, Scott Goodmanson. Mayor, how are you?
I'm doing well. We're 78 days in.
How many times have you been asked, are you surprised that you won the election?
Daily.
Daily, I'll bet. Yeah. And what's your answer?
I like to be like, no, of course we thought we were going to win. It's actually a great question because it just shows people are watching that, something unexpected happened and people are curious about what's going on now. So, I mean, to me, that's good.
I think people maybe don't realize how much you actually did campaign. People outside of Langford wouldn't have noticed that probably as much as people who live there. So what was your strategy throughout this campaign that ended up with you being elected?
If I had to say one specific thing, it was just face to face. Going door to door, talking to people on the sidewalk. I had a booth at the Lexington Fair. Had no idea if that would get traction. And both days, like within 20 minutes of it starting or less, it was just steady people coming by nonstop. To the point on both days, what would happen is people would be talking to me and someone come listen, another person come listen, and then they would start talking. And within 5 minutes, I'm stepping back and just letting them talk about their issues and what's going on, and whether in their same neighborhoods or different. And I'm just writing notes, and then they would slowly move over and someone new would come in to talk with me, and that process would happen again. And there was times we had 2, 3, 4 groups in the open areas outside of my booth talking, and these people never met each other before. And I had said on social media, like, come down, say hi, start a discussion. I didn't ever expect that it was going to work like that.
And I bet you've still got those notes, haven't you?
I do have those notes, yes.
Yeah. So I guess you then had the indication that there was some appetite for change. So at what point did you get some inclination that you might actually win this thing, which you did?
The real inclination that I might win was about half an hour before the results came in.
Oh,
honestly.
Yeah.
So I had said, like, everyone told me I was going to get waxed.
Mm-hmm.
People tell me, don't do this. It's going to be a nightmare. And I just said, like, someone's got to be there and stand up for those that aren't being spoken for. And if that's only 5% or 10% of the people, then okay, like, they still got heard. And on election night, when we were sitting around the campfires, and we ran out of a trailer and the TV is under the awning and we're sitting outside, and I'd said to some family and friends, and I said, you guys all want to know what do I think? And I said, well, if I can get into the 30s or 40s%, we gave it a good run. Of course, I want to win, and there is a chance of that because I never heard anything negative from people. But let's be honest, he'd been in power for 29 of his 30 years on council, and it was when they were delayed and delayed and delayed. And I said, all right, guys, one of two things happening is that either there's so many people coming to the polls, they've had to stay late, and that's good for us, or we've won and they're counting and recounting and counting and counting again because they don't want to tell the mayor what's happened without being 100% sure.
I mean, you grew up in Langford. You're a Langford guy. you must have therefore had motivations for why you wanted to run. Tell me about that.
I remember when Langford like was growing up. I mean, there was logging trucks running down Gold Stream. They'd like fly off the highway straight down Gold Stream, and trucks still with logs big enough. They only had 3 or 4 logs on the truck. There's been a lot of changes and a lot of good changes. And like nothing against the previous councils and mayor. They brought a lot in, but at some point things changed, and um, I would get a little grumpy. My dad would tell me, like, if you're going to complain, do something about it. Otherwise, don't complain. And it really was like you talk about it, but you're not really planning on it. Everyone goes, if I was mayor. And then we'd gone camping for the August long weekend, and I came back and just turned on a computer, and there was a story about the Hidden Valley Mobile Home Park with like people filming out the back of the trailer, and there's a big cat moving earth above and gravel rolling down, and people saying that like they're been covered in dust for weeks. And the things that got me is they said they called City Hall and no one's answering. And I knew the receptionist there. She's awesome. She was sending it somewhere, but for whatever reason, what was going on, their calls weren't being picked up or relayed. It's not for me to say, and I got to be careful. I work with these people now, and I mean they're awesome people. So there was a mix-up somewhere, but I just said that's not right. City Hall is there to protect it and look after the people, not ignore and hamstring them. And I had a talk with my wife, and then 2 hours before deadline, I had my paper submitted, and I thought, okay, we got a few days. No one's going to notice. And I'd gone home to pick up my daughter from school, and we were walking. And on the way back, it's like 3 o'clock, and my phone is just going nuts with notifications. And I look, I'm like, how do they know what's going on? Is people like, congratulations, congratulations, thank God. I'm like, how do you know any of this? So somehow people found out, and it went on social media, and that was the story.
It was the start, and now we're to the point where it's actually happened, and it's only the beginning as well of this administration. So we're going to talk about the goals. I want to talk about that, the goals that you have for your time as mayor. We're going to do that next. Our guest on Chamber Chats today is Scott Goodmanson, who is, I'm still going to call you the new mayor, even though it's been a few months now. So you have priorities, you have things, the rest of your council does too, but what are your goals and how do you prioritize those? Tell me about the top of your list.
Um, well, I mean, the top of my list, things are already getting done. One of them was opening up City Hall to get more people coming, to get people feeling comfortable back at City Hall. And I'd said all through the campaign that like public engagement is so important, from the campaign and getting more people out to vote, to being comfortable in the City Hall and the OCP, and so forth. So that's going. Another one was a code of conduct. You can't have yelling matches in City Hall. You can't have yelling matches in City Hall over a code of conduct. Like that's just, and that has gotten started. And the super famous tree bylaw. I mean, we got that going. And the bylaw that was just passed is very much like a short temporary one, because we are starting a proper urban forestry or urban forest management policy, which is not just tree cutting. I mean, that looks at the total coverage of the city and what areas has what areas can you lose trees and be okay, what areas do you really need to save trees. It's not let's just not cut trees.
You've had a bit of an experience now in dealing with media who want to take you on and things like that, and decisions and process. But would you talk about the code of conduct and those things? Do you think that when when Langford did eventually decide to start live streaming the council meetings, did that change some minds in voters?
Oh, without hesitation.
Yeah.
People said, we had no idea what it was like until we started watching it. And you know what? That's unfortunate for the previous council, but on the other hand, shouldn't have been doing things that made people vote you out simply because they watched your meeting.
Right. So when we talk about those priorities and things that you and the other councillors in the Langford Now group want to get done, how will you measure success? What would you consider to be a success or a win?
Oh, that's a hard one right now
Yeah.
because we're so close to it. I mean, I think for myself, 4 years from now, if we've got regular public engagement and positive public engagement, that'll be a huge change. Um, People weren't coming to meetings because of what was going on at them. People avoid City Hall when they don't feel comfortable there. At our last meeting, we maxed it out.
Something that Langford has not done for quite some time, if ever, is engage on the regional level with the CRD very much. You have made a decision that you will, in fact, represent Langford at the CRD. So tell me, what does that mean to Langford? What does that mean to you? And why do you think that's important?
We're one of the larger municipalities in the CRD. We cannot not be at the table. Us being isolated does no one, including ourselves, any good. Um, Before we were inaugurated, there was Esquimalt puts on these classes that are sort of like how to be a good counselor, and they bring in some speakers, and you know, um, honey, I need some alone time. No, you can't help. I'm sorry. You
It's
can
nice to
sit
see
down
her,
if
though.
you want. You can sit down. Yep, you can be right here. Um, we had these classes, and when I went in, I was not prepared for it. First thing people would say is congratulations, and are you going to the CRD? Like it was that quick.
Hmm.
And I was like, thank you, and yes. Why wouldn't I be? Every other mayor is there. Uh, it's a no-brainer. So I'm also on, I'm on 6 other committees with the CRD. I said to Chair Plant, hey, I want to learn all that I can about the CRD. And while I'm learning about the city, what I learn with you, I can take to the city. And while I take what I learn in the city, I can bring to you guys. And so far, it's been good.
Excellent. And your daughter is going to join us, so we'll see her popping in and out. That's not a problem, and
Okay.
it's a pleasure to have her with us today. That's for sure. So you touched on this a little bit when we got into that discussion about the tree bylaw that you brought in. One of the questions people have is: will development slow down? Will development stop? Will development move forward? I mean, it's boomed in Langford for the last 30 years. But tell me about that now. What's development going to look like in the future with your administration in Langford?
Well, I mean, I can tell you, and we've got staff support on this. Like, we're not here to stop development. So anyone that wants to keep that narrative going, you're just pushing a falsehood. There will be a pivot of development because the public made it clear they don't want the exact same thing that was happening. But that doesn't mean you end development. And so, um, you know, on all this time I've been in, I've routinely been meeting with developers, big developers, small developers, um, people that have oh Hazel, uh, people that have master plans, and like individual developers who are like mortgaging their house to build the next house type thing. One thing I've said to them all is, um, we want to work with you. Don't ever think not. We want you at the table, and we want other groups at the table too. So I've said, like, there's still going to be growth. It's going to pivot. And if you can pivot, great, because I want to work with you. I want to work with all the developers. We don't want things to stall. I mean, there's already thousands of beds in the pipework right now. Like if council dissolved, like it just vanished, there would still be years of work ahead. So we're now focusing on what's actually going to start getting built years from now, if that makes sense, depending on the size, obviously. But I've said, we want you, the developer or the business, the property owner, at the table, and you've got to make money at this because you're not doing this for fun. and we're going to be at the table. We got to look after the city side. And you know what? There might be a community group in your section, and that community group, bring them to the table, and the environmental group or whoever. But if we work together on those, then we get that social buy-in. Because it doesn't matter if you're building houses or selling donuts. If the public isn't going to buy into what you have, then it does no good. And I don't want any developer getting calls from City Hall saying, yeah, we've had 50 calls about what you're doing. Can you please fix this? No, let's take care of that at the beginning. And if each group can get 80%, and it's not all for one and 10% for the rest, then we win. And I've talked to some very large developers, and just today I was talking with a small developer, and I was saying, like, these initial groups that are going to work with us, um, if however it's going to work out, because each group and each site is different. If we get this done, I will raise your hand up and say, look what these guys did. They pivoted, they worked with us, and this is the great work that can be done.
I also need to ask, what's your daughter's name?
Hazel.
Hi, Hazel. It's great to have you here. Hazel, I'm going to talk to your dad all about transportation and moving people around the region, whether it's Langford or somewhere else. We're going to do that next. Our guest on Chamber Chats today is the newly elected Langford Mayor Scott Goodmanson and his little girl. And it's a pleasure to have you both here. Mayor, we've been talking a little bit about the plans for development and what it's going to look like in Langford. But as Langford grows and the rest of the region grows, transportation and strategy around that is on the minds of all the municipal decision makers in this area. Is it time for a regional transit authority and a bigger plan here?
Personally, I think so, yes. We don't have any more roads. We're not going to be building any more roads. I mean, of any size. It's now finding new ways to move people, or have them move less. Whether it is jobs that are more spread out back towards where the houses are, and not centralized in 2 or 3 spots only. And the way we move. In fact, I was in a meeting this afternoon right before here, where we were talking about the ICF and the rail.
Yeah.
Which is a hot topic. Some people love it, some people hate it. I'm a believer in it. Not bringing the Dayliner back, but actually using the corridor for rail, both freight and regular transit service. With that, I met with the head of the ICF last week, and they actually have a plan, like, not to bring the Dayliner going up and down the island, but regular freight and regular commuter traffic. And this is a gentleman who has spent 30 years in rail, 20 with CN. Then when he left, he was like if I understand it right, the head salesman for CN. Went down to Kansas City and ran rail line down there for 5 years or 10 years. Then, if I understand it right, oversaw the buying of the Mexico Railway, and then was up here just visiting family. And someone said, you need to talk to our rail people. And he ended up in the ICF. Please, if you can correct me on those facts, I'm not going to argue, but I mean.
No, that's true. Yeah, his name is Larry Stevenson, and actually there's an earlier chamber chat from last year that we did with him, so folks might want to go back and revisit that. And by the time this airs, Mayor, by the way, we may have heard the decision already from the province and the feds on what's going to happen with the rail bed. But, when you talk about that, another thing that's in the plans is the feasibility study to do a West Shore ferry service from Royal Bay and Colwood into downtown. What do you think the future is of that?
As a general thought, I am all for any service, even if it's seasonal, that gets people out of single cars going down the highway. If someone or somebody can figure a way to bring people by boat from the Western communities, the West Shore, into town, into Esquimalt, in a cost-effective way that at least makes it somewhat doable, then why not? Like,
Yeah.
every 20 people is 20 cars that aren't in front of you. If you have a rail car full of 50 people, you may not believe in rail, but there's 50 less cars blocking your way.
You know, you and I were chatting briefly before we started this recording that you've decided that being the mayor will be your full-time thing, right? And that can be an all-consuming thing, as I think you probably realize, because you're seeing that from what happens with your life every single day. But a work-life balance is very important. I mean, you have a daughter, you have a wife, you have a family, you've got a life. How are you going to maintain that balance between the demands of being mayor and your own personal life?
It's going to be a process in learning. It's right now there is the initial peak of meetings to learn about things, to learn about processes, any number of groups that want to meet because they want to meet the new mayors. Eventually, that will most likely die off a little bit. Um, the nice thing is, I had training running my own business so that, there was lots of times I'd still be working at 9, 10 o'clock at night. Luckily, with this, I've got relative working hours. There's still some stuff in the evenings and some stuff that I have to leave earlier for, but I'm trying to bank as much of it in those normal working hours so that I can see them, in the evenings,
Yeah.
dinner time, be home for dinner.
And just one thing to wrap it up here. You're not the only mayor who doesn't live in the jurisdiction where you're the mayor. Uh, it doesn't really matter. Has that issue gone away? I mean, I don't think it really matters to people whether you live in town or not. You grew up in Langford and you know Langford, right?
Yes. I mean, there's 3 mayors that live in Saanich.
Mhm.
Uh, um, when people ask me that, I say a couple different answers. I'm like, if I lived one house in Colwood, would that invalidate me?
Yeah.
Even though I did all my schooling, shopping, entertainment, so on, day by day in Langford. Inversely, I've met very few staff that live in Langford. I haven't asked where they all live, but I mean, many of them live in Saanich or out in Souk or other neighborhoods. Would I think that they're going to do any less of a job because they don't live here? Of course not. So why would anyone in council be any different?
Yeah. Good point. Mayor, thank you for your time. I know you're busy. Thanks to Hazel for dropping in as well. It was great to have her with us in the call. All the best, and we're very pleased and proud to have Langford as a member of our chamber, and we look forward to chatting with you again. Mayor Scott Goodmanson, thanks for your time.
You're very welcome. You can call on me anytime you want.
Right on. Thanks, Mayor. I'm Bruce Williams. We'll see you again for another Chamber Chat.